Before we begin our journey tonight, a brief note. This episode of Sleepy Paranormal is brought to you by the SAC Center, a leading telehealth clinic specializing in the testing and treatment of autism and ADHD. The SAC Center proudly serves all 50 states, bringing expert care directly to you wherever you are. To learn more about their comprehensive services and how they can help, please visit saccenter.com. Welcome, dear listener, to this gentle exploration into one of the most compelling and mysterious UFO encounters in modern military history. Tonight, we drift together into the deep Amazon rainforest of Peru, to a moment in March of 1997 when a young United States Marine Corps Lance Corporal named Jonathan Weygandt came face to face with something that would forever change his understanding of what exists beyond our earthly realm. As you settle into your comfortable space, perhaps pulling your blanket closer or adjusting your pillow just so, allow yourself to be transported to the humid, verdant jungles of South America, where the air hangs thick with moisture and mystery, and where the canopy above filters the sunlight into dancing patterns of light and shadow. This is not merely a story of strange lights in the sky or unexplained phenomena glimpsed from a distance. This is an intimate account of direct contact, of a moment when the veil between our world and something far more extraordinary was lifted, if only briefly. The year 1997 was a time when the world was on the cusp of a new millennium, when technology was advancing rapidly, yet there remained vast unexplored regions of our planet where ancient secrets might still lie hidden. In the remote jungles of Peru, far from the bustling cities and well-traveled paths, the United States military was conducting operations that few civilians would ever know about, operations that would bring a young Marine into contact with something that defied all conventional explanation. Lance Corporal Jonathan Weygandt was 20 years old, a dedicated Marine serving his country with the kind of quiet courage and commitment that has always characterized America's finest. He had enlisted in the Marine Corps with dreams of serving something greater than himself, of being part of an elite brotherhood that stood ready to defend freedom wherever it might be threatened. Like so many young men and women who choose to wear the uniform, Jonathan possessed a strong sense of duty, an unwavering loyalty to his fellow Marines, and a deep respect for the chain of command that governed military life. In February of 1997, Jonathan received orders that would take him far from the familiar landscapes of his homeland to the exotic and challenging environment of South America. He was being transferred to a section participating in Operation Laser Strike, a counter-narcotics operation coordinated by USAUTHCOM and based at Howard Air Force Base in Panama under the command of General Wesley Clark. This was serious business, involving up to 20 different agencies including the DEA, USAF, CIA, and National Guard, all working together to combat the flow of illegal drugs from South America into the United States. Operation Laser Strike was part of a larger effort to track and identify potential drug trafficking aircraft entering and exiting Peruvian airspace. The operation required forcing suspicious aircraft to land, and if they did not comply, the rules of engagement permitted shooting them down. It was dangerous work, conducted in one of the most challenging environments on Earth, where the dense jungle could hide almost anything, and where the line between friend and foe was not always clear. Jonathan found himself deployed as a Marine Corps Stinger Avenger gunner as part of MACG-28, a USMC unit tasked with providing perimeter security for the radar tracking station at Pucallpa Air Base in Peru. The base was a joint operation housing USMC, USAF, FAP, which was the Peruvian Air Force, and CIA personnel, along with citation tracker aircraft. The Marines were under the command of Master Sergeant Chris Diggins and Major Bob Cole, experienced leaders who understood the complexities and dangers of operating in such a remote and potentially hostile environment. The region around Pucallpa was known to be active with narco smugglers and terrorist groups, particularly the Shining Path, a violent revolutionary organization that had been terrorizing Peru for years. The perceived threats were real and constant, requiring the Marines to maintain a high level of vigilance and readiness at all times. For a young Marine like Jonathan, this deployment represented both an opportunity to serve his country in a meaningful way and a chance to prove himself in challenging circumstances. The aim of Operation Laser Strike was straightforward in concept but complex in execution. Aircraft entering Peruvian airspace were tracked by radar, and if they appeared suspicious or failed to respond to radio communications, they were intercepted. The goal was to force these aircraft to land for inspection, but if they refused to comply, the rules of engagement permitted shooting them down. It was a high-stakes operation where split-second decisions could mean the difference between stopping drug traffickers and potentially causing an international incident. There were 3 bases in Peru with U.S. personnel located at Iquitos, Andoas, and Pucallpa, with the possibility of additional USAF personnel at Juanjuy. The air base at Pucallpa in 1997 was a bustling hub of activity, with USMC, USAF, Peruvian Air Force and CIA personnel all working together in what was often a tense and challenging environment. The base represented a significant investment in the war on drugs, with sophisticated radar equipment, military aircraft and highly trained personnel all focused on the mission of stopping the flow of narcotics. For Jonathan, the deployment to Peru was initially routine, involving the kind of perimeter security duties that were standard for Marines in such operations. He stood guard duty, maintained his equipment, and followed the orders of his superiors with the dedication and professionalism that had been drilled into him during his training. The days were long and often monotonous, punctuated by moments of tension when aircraft were detected and intercepted. It was the kind of deployment where weeks could pass without significant incident, lulling personnel into a routine that could be suddenly shattered by unexpected events. The jungle environment was unlike anything Jonathan had experienced before. The humidity was oppressive, the heat intense, and the sounds of the rainforest created a constant backdrop of chirping, buzzing, and rustling that never quite faded into silence. At night, the darkness was profound, broken only by the artificial lights of the base and the occasional flash of lightning from the frequent thunderstorms that swept across the region. It was a place where nature seemed to press in from all sides, where the civilized world felt very far away, and where the unexpected could emerge from the green depths at any moment. The indigenous people of the region had lived in harmony with this environment for thousands of years, developing a deep understanding of the jungle's rhythms and secrets. They spoke of things that moved through the forest that were not of this world, of lights that danced among the trees, and of encounters with beings that defied explanation. To the local population, the boundary between the natural and supernatural was fluid, and stories of strange phenomena were woven into the fabric of their daily lives. For the American military personnel stationed at Pucallpa, such stories were often dismissed as folklore or superstition, the product of isolated communities with limited education and exposure to modern scientific thinking. But the jungle has a way of humbling even the most skeptical minds, and the events of March 1997 would challenge everything that Jonathan Weygandt thought he knew about the nature of reality itself. It was on a night in late March 1997, sometime between 11 in the evening and midnight, when the ordinary rhythm of military life at Pucallpa was suddenly interrupted by an event that would forever alter the course of Jonathan Weygandt's life. He was on perimeter security guard duty, a routine assignment that involved maintaining vigilance around the base's outer boundaries, watching for any signs of unauthorized intrusion or suspicious activity. The night was typical for the region, warm and humid, with the ever-present chorus of jungle sounds creating a natural symphony that had become the soundtrack to his deployment. As Jonathan maintained his watch, 3 senior non-commissioned officers approached him with an urgency that immediately caught his attention. Staff Sergeant Montealegre, an E6 with years of experience, along with Sergeant Allen and Sergeant Atkins, both E5s, came to Jonathan with news that would set in motion a chain of events unlike anything in his military experience. They informed him that there had been an aircraft crash, possibly involving a friendly aircraft, and that a team needed to be assembled immediately to secure the crash site. The information was sparse but compelling. An aircraft had gone down somewhere in the jungle, and there was uncertainty about whether it was a friendly or hostile craft. In the context of Operation Laser Strike, such incidents were not entirely unexpected. Aircraft were regularly intercepted, and some were shot down when they failed to comply with orders to land. However, the possibility that this might be a friendly aircraft added a layer of urgency and concern that required immediate investigation. The decision was made to assemble a team of 8 to 10 Marines who would travel to the crash site to secure the area and determine the nature of the downed aircraft. Jonathan was selected to be part of this team, along with Sergeants Allen and Atkins, who would serve as the team leaders. The mission was straightforward in concept but potentially dangerous in execution. They would travel by convoy to the general area of the crash, then proceed on foot through the jungle to locate and secure the site. At approximately 3 in the morning, the team departed Pucallpa Base in 5 Humvees, their headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness as they made their way along the rough roads that led deeper into the Peruvian jungle. The journey was challenging, with the vehicles navigating rutted dirt roads that had been carved through the dense vegetation. The air was thick with moisture, and the sounds of the jungle seemed to press in from all sides as they traveled further from the relative safety and familiarity of the base. The convoy traveled for roughly 3 hours, covering terrain that became increasingly difficult as they moved away from the established roads and into more remote areas. The landscape was a mixture of dense rainforest, rolling hills, and occasional clearings where the canopy opened up to reveal the star-filled sky above. As they traveled, the eastern horizon began to show the first faint hints of dawn, the darkness gradually giving way to the gray light that precedes sunrise in the tropics. When they reached the general area where the crash was believed to have occurred, the team left their vehicles and prepared to continue on foot. The terrain ahead was too rough and densely vegetated for the Humvees to navigate, requiring the Marines to hump through the bush, as Jonathan would later describe it. They gathered their equipment, checked their weapons, and began the challenging trek through the jungle toward what they hoped would be the crash site. The jungle at dawn is a place of extraordinary beauty and mystery. As the first light of day filters through the canopy, it creates a cathedral-like atmosphere where shafts of golden sunlight illuminate the mist that rises from the forest floor. The air is filled with the sounds of awakening wildlife, the calls of exotic birds, and the rustling of unseen creatures moving through the undergrowth. For the Marines, however, this natural splendor was secondary to their mission. They moved with purpose and caution, aware that they were entering an area where the unexpected could emerge at any moment. Jonathan, along with Sergeants Allen and Atkins, took the lead as the team made its way through the dense vegetation. The going was slow and difficult, with thick vines, fallen logs, and uneven terrain making every step a challenge. The humidity was oppressive, and within minutes of beginning their trek, their uniforms were soaked with perspiration. The jungle seemed to close in around them, creating a sense of isolation from the outside world that was both exhilarating and slightly unnerving. As they pushed deeper into the forest, following what appeared to be the most likely path toward the crash site, Jonathan began to notice something unusual about the terrain ahead. There seemed to be a disturbance in the natural pattern of the jungle, a place where the vegetation appeared to have been disrupted or damaged. As they drew closer, it became clear that something significant had indeed occurred in this remote corner of the Peruvian rainforest. The first indication that they had found what they were looking for came when Jonathan spotted what he would later describe as a huge gash in the land where something had crashed. The sight was unmistakable, a scar in the earth that spoke of tremendous force and impact. Trees had been shattered and pushed aside, the ground was torn and churned, and there was an unmistakable sense that something extraordinary had happened in this place. As the 3 Marines approached the edge of what appeared to be a ravine or depression in the ground, Jonathan radioed back to the other members of their team, instructing them to halt their advance. What lay before them was unlike anything they had expected to find, and the sight would challenge everything they thought they knew about the nature of reality itself. At the bottom of the ravine, partially embedded in the cliff face, was an object that defied immediate classification. It was not the wreckage of any conventional aircraft that Jonathan had ever seen or been trained to recognize. Instead, what lay before them was something that seemed to belong more to the realm of science fiction than to the practical world of military operations and drug interdiction. The object was teardrop or egg-shaped, with its narrow end embedded deep into the cliff face as if it had struck the earth with tremendous force. The surface of the craft appeared to be metallic, but it possessed a quality that was unlike any metal Jonathan had ever encountered. It seemed to be constantly changing, shifting and flowing like liquid mercury, with colors that reminded him of gasoline dripping into water, creating that iridescent, mother-of-pearl effect that seems to dance and shimmer in the light. As Jonathan stared at the object, trying to process what he was seeing, he became aware of a low humming sound emanating from the craft. The sound was unlike anything he had heard before, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to penetrate not just his ears but his entire body. There was something about the sound that instilled a profound sense of unease, a primal fear that seemed to bypass rational thought and speak directly to some deeper part of his consciousness. The craft appeared to be alive in some inexplicable way, its surface constantly shifting and changing as if it were breathing or pulsing with some internal energy. Large vents that resembled fish gills were visible along its sides, and there was a significant gash in the hull that looked as if it had been caused by some kind of impact or weapon. Jonathan's military training led him to speculate that the damage might have been caused by a Hawk missile, the kind of surface-to-air weapon that could potentially bring down an aircraft. But this was clearly no ordinary aircraft. As Jonathan continued to observe the object, he experienced something that would haunt him for years to come. Along with the visual and auditory sensations, he began to perceive what he could only describe as telepathic communication, a voice or presence that seemed to speak directly to his mind, attempting to counteract the fear that was overwhelming him. It was as if the craft or something within it was aware of his presence and was trying to establish some form of contact or communication. The experience was profoundly disorienting and frightening. Here was a young Marine, trained to handle combat situations and unexpected challenges, finding himself face to face with something that challenged the very foundations of his understanding of the world. The rational part of his mind struggled to find some conventional explanation for what he was seeing, while another part of him recognized that he was witnessing something truly extraordinary, something that would forever change his perspective on humanity's place in the universe. As Jonathan stood transfixed by the impossible sight before him, his fellow Marines, Sergeants Allen and Adkins, recognized the danger of the situation and began shouting at him to get away from the object. Their voices seemed to come from very far away, as if he were hearing them through water or from the bottom of a deep well. The strange humming sound from the craft and the telepathic sensations he was experiencing had created a kind of altered state of consciousness that made it difficult for him to respond immediately to their urgent commands. With considerable effort, Jonathan managed to tear himself away from the mesmerizing sight of the craft and began to climb back up to the top of the ravine where his fellow Marines were positioned. As he reached the rim and looked back toward the crash site, he noticed something that filled him with a new kind of apprehension. In the distance, from a higher position on the opposite side of the ravine, he could see figures moving toward their location. These were not members of their Marine unit, and their appearance and behavior suggested that they were part of some other operation entirely. The approaching figures were dressed in black fatigues, distinctly different from the standard military uniforms worn by Jonathan and his team. Some of them appeared to be wearing hazmat suits, the kind of protective gear used when dealing with hazardous materials or contamination. Most significantly, several of the figures were wearing jackets clearly marked with DOE, indicating that they were personnel from the Department of Energy, a civilian agency that would have no obvious reason to be involved in a routine aircraft crash recovery operation. The presence of DOE personnel was particularly puzzling and concerning. The Department of Energy has responsibilities that include nuclear weapons, nuclear reactors and radioactive materials, but their involvement in what was supposed to be a simple aircraft crash recovery seemed completely out of place. The fact that they had arrived so quickly and in such numbers suggested that this was not a spontaneous response to an unexpected event, but rather a planned operation that had been set in motion well before Jonathan and his team had arrived at the crash site. As the figures in black fatigues approached, Jonathan could see that they had arrived by helicopter. 2 U.S. Army C-47 Chinook helicopters had landed in a clearing on the higher ground, and it was from these aircraft that the mysterious personnel had emerged. The Chinooks were large, twin-rotor helicopters capable of carrying significant numbers of personnel and equipment, and their presence indicated that this was a major operation involving substantial resources and planning. The arrival of these personnel marked the end of Jonathan's brief encounter with the extraordinary craft. The figures in black fatigues moved with the efficiency and authority of people who were completely in control of the situation. They approached the three Marines with a sense of purpose that made it clear that Jonathan, Allen, and Adkins were no longer in charge of this operation, if they ever had been. Without ceremony or explanation, the mysterious personnel placed Jonathan under what could only be described as arrest. They confiscated his gear, including his weapon and radio, and secured his hands with cable ties, the kind of plastic restraints commonly used by law enforcement and military personnel for detaining individuals. The treatment was not violent or abusive, but it was firm and uncompromising, making it clear that Jonathan was no longer a participant in this operation but rather a potential security risk who needed to be controlled and contained. Jonathan was escorted to one of the CH-47 helicopters and placed on a cot inside the aircraft. The interior of the helicopter was configured for transporting personnel rather than equipment, and it was clear that this was a well-planned operation rather than an improvised response to an unexpected situation. As the helicopter lifted off from the jungle clearing, Jonathan found himself being transported away from the crash site and toward an uncertain destination. The flight was relatively short, and when the helicopter landed, Jonathan found himself being handed over to a United States Air Force lieutenant colonel. The officer was professional but stern, and it was immediately clear that Jonathan was now part of a very different kind of operation than the routine crash site security mission he had thought he was participating in. The lieutenant colonel informed Jonathan that he would be undergoing interrogation, and the tone of the conversation made it clear that this was not a request but a command. What followed was one of the most difficult and frightening experiences of Jonathan's young life. For approximately 15 hours, he was subjected to intensive interrogation by personnel who seemed to know far more about what had happened at the crash site than they were willing to reveal. The questioning was relentless and psychologically aggressive, designed to break down his resistance and extract every detail of what he had seen and experienced. The interrogators used techniques that were clearly intended to intimidate and frighten him. They verbally attacked him, questioned his loyalty, and suggested that his future in the military and his personal safety might depend on his cooperation and discretion. While they never resorted to physical violence, the psychological pressure was intense and unrelenting. For a 20-year-old Marine who had been trained to follow orders and respect authority, the experience was profoundly disorienting and traumatic. Throughout the interrogation, Jonathan maintained his account of what he had seen at the crash site. He described the strange craft, its unusual appearance and behavior, and the telepathic sensations he had experienced. The interrogators seemed particularly interested in these details, asking him to repeat and clarify his observations multiple times. Their questions suggested that they were familiar with similar incidents and that Jonathan's experience was not entirely unique or unexpected. At the end of the interrogation, the lieutenant colonel presented Jonathan with a set of papers and ordered him to sign them. Jonathan was exhausted, frightened, and confused, and he signed the documents without fully reading or understanding their contents. Years later, he would reflect on this moment with regret, recognizing that he had likely signed away his right to speak publicly about his experience or seek legal recourse for his treatment. After signing the papers, Jonathan was not immediately returned to his unit or to the base at Pucallpa. Instead, he was segregated with other Air Force personnel for a period of approximately 3 weeks. During this time, he was kept in isolation from his fellow Marines and was not allowed to communicate with the outside world. The purpose of this segregation was clearly to ensure that he had no opportunity to discuss his experience with others who might ask questions or spread information about what had occurred. The 3 weeks of isolation were a difficult and lonely time for Jonathan. He was housed in basic accommodations and provided with minimal information about when he might be released or what would happen to him next. The uncertainty was perhaps the most difficult aspect of the experience, as he had no way of knowing whether his military career was over, whether he would face disciplinary action, or whether he would ever be allowed to return to normal duty. During this period of isolation, Jonathan began to notice some disturbing physical effects that seemed to be related to his encounter with the craft. He discovered that a gel-like substance had somehow gotten onto his fatigues during his close approach to the object, and this substance had caused discoloration of the fabric. More alarmingly, he noticed that the hair on his arms had been burned off, apparently by exposure to whatever energy or radiation the craft had been emitting. These physical effects were deeply concerning and suggested that his encounter with the craft had exposed him to some form of energy or radiation that was potentially harmful to human beings. The fact that the mysterious personnel had been wearing hazmat suits now took on a more ominous significance, suggesting that they had known in advance that the crash site might be contaminated with dangerous materials. Perhaps most disturbing of all were the ongoing psychological effects that Jonathan began to experience. The telepathic sensations that had begun during his encounter with the craft did not end when he was taken away from the crash site. Instead, they continued to occur sporadically, creating a phenomenon that researchers would later term the Hitchhiker effect. Jonathan described these ongoing experiences as terrible and intrusive, a constant reminder of his encounter that would continue to affect him for years to come. After 3 weeks of isolation, Jonathan was finally released and sent back to the United States. His return to normal military life was anything but normal, however. The experience had fundamentally changed him, and he found it difficult to readjust to the routine of military service. The knowledge of what he had seen, combined with the trauma of his interrogation and isolation, created a burden that he would carry for the rest of his life. The official records of Jonathan's deployment to Peru make no mention of the extraordinary events of that March night in 1997. According to his discharge papers and military records, he served as a low-altitude air defense gunner with MACG-28, providing perimeter security for radar tracking operations. The documents show that he was transferred to various commands during his deployment, but there is no official acknowledgement of his encounter with the craft or his subsequent detention and interrogation. 4 years after his return to civilian life, Jonathan remained silent about his experience. The papers he had signed, combined with the psychological trauma of his interrogation, created a powerful incentive to keep quiet about what had happened. He understood that speaking publicly about his encounter could have serious consequences for his personal safety and well-being, and he was not prepared to take those risks. However, the burden of carrying such an extraordinary secret eventually became too great to bear in silence. In 2001, Jonathan made the difficult decision to come forward with his story, approaching Dr. Stephen Greer and the Disclosure Project, an organization dedicated to bringing forward military and government witnesses to UFO encounters. His decision to speak publicly was not made lightly, and it required considerable courage given the potential consequences of breaking his silence. Jonathan's testimony became part of a growing body of evidence suggesting that the United States government and military have had encounters with unidentified flying objects that possess capabilities far beyond any known human technology. His account was particularly compelling because of his military background, his detailed observations, and the physical evidence of his encounter in the form of the damaged fatigues and burned hair. The story of Jonathan Weygandt's encounter in the Peruvian jungle represents more than just another UFO sighting or close encounter. It is a window into a world of government secrecy, advanced technology, and phenomena that challenge our understanding of what is possible in our universe. It raises profound questions about what our governments know about extraterrestrial visitation and why that information is being kept from the public. As you continue to rest comfortably, breathing slowly and naturally, consider the profound implications of Jonathan Weygandt's extraordinary encounter in the depths of the Peruvian rainforest. His story represents far more than an isolated incident or a single individual's unusual experience. It is part of a larger tapestry of encounters, sightings, and testimonies that suggest we are not alone in this vast universe, and that contact between human beings and non-human intelligences may be far more common than most people realize. The Weygandt case is particularly significant because it involves a credible military witness who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming forward with his story. Jonathan was a trained Marine, accustomed to following orders and maintaining operational security. His decision to break his silence and speak publicly about his encounter required tremendous courage and represented a significant personal risk. The fact that he was willing to take that risk speaks to the profound impact that his experience had on his life and his sense of responsibility to share the truth with the world. The physical evidence associated with Jonathan's encounter adds another layer of credibility to his account. The damaged fatigues, the burned hair on his arms, and the ongoing psychological effects he experienced all suggest that his encounter was not a hallucination or a case of mistaken identity, but rather a genuine interaction with some form of advanced technology or non-human intelligence. The gel-like substance that contaminated his clothing and the apparent radiation exposure he suffered indicate that the craft he encountered was emitting some form of energy that was potentially harmful to human beings. The rapid response of the Department of Energy personnel is perhaps one of the most intriguing aspects of the entire incident. The DOE's involvement suggests that the crash was not an unexpected event but rather something that had been anticipated or planned for. The fact that they arrived so quickly with appropriate protective equipment and a well-organized recovery operation indicates that there are protocols in place for dealing with such incidents and that this was not the first time such a recovery had been conducted. The presence of hazmat suits and the apparent concern about contamination also suggest that the authorities were aware of the potential dangers associated with exposure to the craft or its occupants. This raises disturbing questions about what our government knows about these phenomena and whether there have been other incidents involving exposure of military personnel to potentially harmful alien technology. The 3-week isolation period that Jonathan endured serves as a stark reminder of the lengths to which the authorities will go to maintain secrecy around these incidents. The psychological pressure applied during his interrogation and the legal documents he was forced to sign represent a systematic effort to silence witnesses and prevent information about UFO encounters from reaching the public. This pattern of intimidation and secrecy has been reported by numerous other military witnesses who have come forward with similar accounts. Jonathan's experience also highlights the personal cost of such encounters for the individuals involved. The ongoing psychological effects he described, including the continuing telepathic sensations and the trauma of his detention and interrogation, represent a heavy burden that he has had to carry for decades. The fact that he received no support or counseling from the military after his experience speaks to the callous disregard for the welfare of personnel who become involved in these incidents. The broader context of Operation Laser Strike and the counter-narcotics operations being conducted in Peru in 1997 adds another dimension to the story. The fact that this encounter occurred during a legitimate military operation, involving multiple agencies and significant resources, suggests that UFO incidents may be more common in areas where there is intensive military activity. This raises questions about whether these craft are monitoring human military operations or whether there is some other connection between UFO activity and military installations. The Peruvian jungle setting of Jonathan's encounter is also significant. Remote areas of the world, far from population centers and media attention, may be preferred locations for UFO activity precisely because they offer privacy and reduced risk of widespread public exposure. The Amazon rainforest, with its vast unexplored regions and sparse human population, would be an ideal location for non-human intelligences to conduct operations without attracting unwanted attention. The teardrop or egg-shaped craft that Jonathan described matches descriptions from numerous other UFO encounters around the world. The constantly shifting liquid-like surface, the fish gill-like vents, and the humming sound are all details that have been reported by other witnesses in different locations and time periods. This consistency across multiple independent accounts suggests that these are genuine observations of real phenomena rather than fabricated stories or misidentified conventional objects. The telepathic communication that Jonathan experienced during his encounter is another element that appears frequently in UFO contact reports. Many witnesses describe receiving mental impressions, thoughts, or communications that seem to come directly from the craft or its occupants. This suggests that these intelligences may possess advanced mental capabilities that allow them to communicate directly with human consciousness, bypassing the need for conventional verbal or written communication. The apparent attempt by the intelligence to counteract Jonathan's fear during the encounter is particularly intriguing. This suggests a level of empathy or concern for human emotional states that indicates these beings may not be hostile or indifferent to human welfare. The fact that the communication seemed designed to calm rather than frighten him suggests that the encounter may have been as unexpected for the craft's occupants as it was for Jonathan. The damage to the craft that Jonathan observed, which he believed might have been caused by a Hawk missile, raises important questions about the relationship between human military forces and UFO phenomena. If the craft was indeed shot down by human weapons, it suggests that our military has both the capability and the willingness to engage these objects when they are detected. This would represent a significant escalation in the relationship between human and non-human intelligences and could have profound implications for future contact scenarios. The fact that the craft appeared to be partially embedded in the cliff face suggests that it crashed with considerable force, yet it still appeared to be active and emitting energy. This indicates a level of technological sophistication that far exceeds anything in the human arsenal. The ability to survive such an impact while maintaining operational capability speaks to engineering and materials science that is centuries or perhaps millennia ahead of our current understanding. The ongoing secrecy surrounding incidents like Jonathan's encounter represents one of the greatest challenges facing those who seek to understand the UFO phenomenon. The systematic suppression of information, the intimidation of witnesses, and the denial of obvious evidence create an environment where the truth becomes increasingly difficult to discern. This secrecy serves no legitimate national security purpose and instead prevents humanity from understanding one of the most important phenomena of our time. Jonathan Weygandt's courage in coming forward with his story, despite the personal risks and potential consequences, represents a beacon of hope for those who believe that the truth about UFO encounters should be shared with the world. His testimony, along with that of hundreds of other military and government witnesses, is slowly building a case for disclosure that may eventually overcome the forces of secrecy and denial that have dominated this field for decades. As we consider the implications of Jonathan's encounter, we are reminded that we live in a universe that is far stranger and more wonderful than most of us imagine. The possibility that we are being visited by intelligences from other worlds challenges our assumptions about our place in the cosmos and forces us to confront the reality that we may not be the most advanced form of life in the universe. The story of what happened in that remote corner of the Peruvian jungle in March 1997 continues to resonate today, more than 2 decades later. It serves as a reminder that there are still mysteries in our world that defy easy explanation, phenomena that challenge our understanding of what is possible, and encounters that can forever change the lives of those who experience them. For Jonathan Weygandt, that night in the jungle was a moment of contact with something beyond human understanding, a glimpse into a reality that most of us can only imagine. His willingness to share that experience with the world, despite the personal cost, represents an act of courage that deserves our respect and consideration. Whether we choose to believe his account or not, we cannot ignore the sincerity of his testimony or the consistency of his story over the many years since he first came forward. As you rest peacefully tonight, perhaps you might reflect on the vastness of the universe and the possibility that we are not alone among the stars. The cosmos is filled with billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, many of which likely have planets capable of supporting life. In such an immense universe, the idea that Earth is the only world to have developed intelligent life seems increasingly unlikely. The encounters reported by witnesses like Jonathan Weygandt suggest that contact between human and non-human intelligences may already be occurring, hidden from public view by layers of secrecy and denial. If this is true, then we are living through one of the most significant periods in human history, a time when our species is beginning to make contact with other forms of consciousness that share our universe. The implications of such contact are profound and far-reaching. It would fundamentally change our understanding of our place in the cosmos, our relationship with technology and the environment, and our potential for growth and development as a species. It would challenge many of our religious, philosophical, and scientific assumptions and force us to reconsider what it means to be human in a universe populated by other intelligent beings. Perhaps most importantly, the reality of contact with non-human intelligences would remind us that we are all part of a larger cosmic community, connected not just to each other but to forms of life and consciousness that we are only beginning to understand. This perspective could help us transcend the divisions and conflicts that have plagued our species and inspire us to work together toward a future worthy of our potential as conscious beings in an infinite universe. Now, as our journey through the mysterious encounter of Lance Corporal Jonathan Weygandt draws to a close, allow yourself to settle even more deeply into the comfort of your resting place. Feel the weight of your body being fully supported, whether you're lying in bed, resting on a couch, or finding comfort in your favorite chair. There's nothing you need to do now except breathe naturally and allow yourself to drift into the peaceful realm of sleep. Let your eyes close gently if they haven't already, and begin to notice the natural rhythm of your breathing. There's no need to change or control your breath in any way. Simply observe as the air flows in and out of your body, carrying with it a sense of calm and relaxation that spreads through every cell of your being. With each exhale, release any tension or thoughts from the day. With each inhale, welcome the peace and tranquility that your body and mind are naturally seeking. As you breathe, imagine yourself in a place of perfect safety and serenity. Perhaps you're lying in a peaceful meadow under a canopy of stars, where the night sky stretches endlessly above you, filled with countless points of light that represent the infinite possibilities of our universe. The grass beneath you is soft and warm, and a gentle breeze carries the sweet scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of a babbling brook. In this peaceful place you are completely safe and at ease. Here, the mysteries of the universe feel not frightening or overwhelming, but rather comforting and wondrous. The stars above seem to twinkle with a gentle intelligence, as if they are ancient guardians watching over you with benevolent care. You feel connected to something vast and beautiful, part of a cosmic tapestry that includes all forms of life and consciousness throughout the universe. Allow your mind to drift back to the story we shared tonight, but now from this place of perfect peace and safety. The encounter in the Peruvian jungle becomes not a tale of fear or uncertainty, but rather a reminder of the extraordinary nature of existence itself. Jonathan's courage in facing the unknown and sharing his truth becomes an inspiration for your own journey through life, a reminder that even in the face of the mysterious and unexplained, we can choose to respond with curiosity rather than fear, with openness rather than closed-mindedness. Feel a wave of relaxation beginning at the top of your head, like warm golden light that slowly flows down through your entire body. This light carries with it all the wonder and mystery of the cosmos, all the peace and tranquility of this perfect moment. As it flows across your forehead, it smooths away any lines of worry or concern. As it moves around your eyes, it releases any strain from the day's seeing, allowing your eyelids to become heavy and relaxed. The wave of golden relaxation continues down through your jaw, allowing it to soften and part slightly, releasing any words that were spoken or held back today. It flows through your neck and shoulders, areas that often carry the weight of our daily responsibilities. Feel these muscles softening and lengthening, allowing your shoulders to drop away from your ears as all tension melts away. This peaceful energy continues down through your arms, through your elbows and wrists, into your hands and fingers, until your entire upper body feels heavy and completely relaxed. Your arms rest comfortably at your sides, requiring no effort to maintain their position. You are fully supported and completely at ease. Now allow this wave of tranquility to move through your chest, slowing your heartbeat to its natural resting rhythm. Feel it flowing through your abdomen, releasing any tension held in your core. Let it move through your lower back, an area that often holds the stress of supporting us through life's challenges. All of this tension simply melts away, leaving you feeling lighter and more peaceful than you have in a long time. The relaxation continues down through your hips and pelvis, through your thighs and knees into your calves and shins, finally reaching your feet and toes. Your entire body now feels heavy, relaxed, and completely supported by the earth beneath you. You are safe, you are at peace, and you are exactly where you need to be in this moment. As you rest in this state of deep physical relaxation, imagine that you are surrounded by a protective bubble of soft, shimmering light. This light represents all the love and protection that surrounds you, not just from the people in your life who care about you, but from the universe itself. Within this bubble, you are completely safe from any harm or negativity. Nothing can disturb your peace or interrupt your journey into restful sleep. In this protected space, allow your mind to wander freely among the stars. Imagine yourself floating gently through the cosmos, past planets and moons, through nebulae of swirling colors, and among star systems that may harbor their own forms of life and consciousness. You move through this vast expanse not as a stranger or intruder, but as a welcome part of the cosmic family, connected to all forms of life throughout the universe. As you drift through this celestial landscape, you encounter other forms of consciousness, beings of light and wisdom who greet you with warmth and understanding. These encounters are peaceful and joyful, filled with a sense of recognition and belonging. You realize that consciousness is not limited to human form, but exists in countless varieties throughout the universe, all connected by the same fundamental energy of love and awareness. These wise beings share with you their understanding that fear of the unknown is natural but unnecessary. They show you that the universe is fundamentally benevolent, that consciousness seeks to know itself through countless forms and experiences, and that every encounter, even those that seem frightening or mysterious, is ultimately an opportunity for growth and understanding. You feel a deep sense of gratitude for this cosmic perspective, for the reminder that you are part of something infinitely larger and more beautiful than your daily concerns and worries. This understanding brings with it a profound peace, a knowing that you are loved and supported not just by those around you, but by the very fabric of existence itself. As you continue to float peacefully through this cosmic realm, you begin to feel yourself gently descending back toward Earth, back toward your physical body resting comfortably in your safe space. But you bring with you the peace and wisdom of your celestial journey, the understanding that you are connected to all life throughout the universe, and the knowledge that you are never truly alone. Feel yourself settling back into your body, but now with a deeper sense of peace and connection than you had before. Your breathing continues to be slow and natural, your body completely relaxed and supported. The protective bubble of light remains around you, ensuring that your sleep will be peaceful and restorative. Know that as you sleep tonight, your unconscious mind will continue to process and integrate the insights and peace you've received during our time together. Your dreams may carry you on further journeys through the cosmos, or they may simply provide the deep, restful sleep that your body and mind need to restore and rejuvenate themselves. There is nothing you need to do now except surrender to the natural process of sleep. Your body knows how to rest and restore itself, your mind knows how to process the experiences of the day, and your spirit knows how to connect with the infinite source of peace and love that surrounds you always. With each breath, you are sinking deeper into relaxation and peace. With each exhale, you are releasing the day and all its concerns. With each inhale, you are receiving the rest and renewal that you need. Allow yourself to drift now, like a feather floating gently on a warm breeze, carried by currents of love and peace toward the restorative depths of sleep. Rest well, dear listener, knowing that you are part of something magnificent and mysterious, that the universe holds countless wonders yet to be discovered, and that your own journey through life is a precious and important part of the cosmic story. Sleep peacefully, and may your dreams be filled with the gentle wisdom of the stars and the quiet strength that comes from knowing you are forever connected to the infinite mystery and beauty of existence. Sweet dreams, and may you wake tomorrow with a renewed sense of wonder at the extraordinary nature of life itself. This episode of Sleepy Psychology was brought to you by the SAC Center, a leading telehealth clinic dedicated to the testing and treatment of autism and ADHD. The SAC Center is committed to providing expert, compassionate care across all 50 states, bringing specialized support directly to you, wherever you are. To explore their comprehensive services and learn how they can help, please visit May your dreams be serene and your rest be deep. Good night.